That's not a comic book. Now that's a comic book.
So this time I have Zorro by PaperCutz, Volume 3, Vultures. It does not look like I'm going to be able to find Volume 4. Um, which is unfortunate. But this is the problem with um, how the Zorro license, just kind of gives the thing away as long as they can make a quick buck off of it. And that's disappointing. But I talked about that a lot in my last two episodes, so let's talk about just this. Okay, so what's the situation this time? Well, Zorro and Luya are driving across the Great American West. Someone's in trouble, and Zorro feels the need to go help. This is becoming very formulaic for these two, which is fine. I don't care with Zorro helping people as he travels across the West to find this woman's safety. I feel like Zorro's kind of going maybe a little too far out of his way. I feel like he's kind of doing just a little too much to go. Yeah, I'm gonna go travel for 2 months. Really, 2 months? You can't find her more safety from the Commandante without traveling for 2 months? Going out to the unknown wilderness with her seems irresponsible. So anyway, they come across people who need help, and Zorro is there to save the day. I really like this page in concept. I'm not sure how I feel about it because, the drawing of Zorro in this vulture's eye is a really neat idea, but the detail on Zorro is so minimalist that it almost looks like someone penciled it in. And I don't like that. Anyway. So yeah, Zorro's helping this lady who's, how to put this? There's a guy who, cozies up to people and gets to people who make art or own a lot of art and gets them right before their death to sign everything over to him through charm, and then sells and then murders them and sells all their art to get rich and blah blah blah. So Zorro's saving a woman from that grisly fate, but in his attempt to, and in his gentlemanliness, he saves a man who almost fell into boiling, scalding water. This man tried to kill him, but he's unaware of how aware this guy is of the real situation. So he decides to save him. I like this scene where he first confronts these bad guys. I talked about how this artist Sidney Liam seems to have a very anime manga inspired art style, and this panel right here of Zorro slicing through this guy's gun just so sold that for me. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. But anyway, so Zorro saves the guy, but that means he's distracted long enough to get knocked out by the head henchman of the bad guy. And when he awakens, we get this neat little idea of Zorro being tied to the ground in what they call the mud volcano, as a bunch of vultures, circle overhead, hence the name Vultures for the volume. Anyway, Zorro's able to escape by waiting for a vulture to come and start to peck at him, and when it goes to his hand, he hasn't moved since the thing's landed on him, so it's not skittish at all. Once the vulture gets to his hand, he grabs it by the neck and uses its beak to get himself out of his restraints. That's really hard to tell that's what's happening, though, because in this panel in particular, it looks like he's broken out of the restraints already. And I'm like, huh? And that's really not what's happened, because a couple panels later, his arm is still tied down over on that side. So it's like, I feel like this was a miscommunication between the writer and artist here, where it's like he meant Gregor probably had Zorro grabs the vulture as it gets closer to his arm, and the artist is probably like, well, I guess he just reaches up and grabs the vulture by like straightening against the rope at the right time. It's like, that's not the implication. And so it creates this weird continuity error. Anyway, Zorro gets free and he's able to defeat the bad guys, save the damsel in distress, blah 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 blah. Here's the thing. Zorro gets free literally on this page. Look how much of this book is left. So literally in the next few pages, he takes a guy out, throws a rock at another guy who falls in this mud volcano. It's literally, he gets free in one page, 1, 2, end of the book, as Alulia shows back up. That is the end of the book. What's this? This is a preview for Volume 4, which I'll probably never be able to read. Steve's in the comments here, and he's talking about motion lines. This has motion lines in this book. It's just, I feel it was poorly described. It was either poorly described or misinterpreted by the artist. But anyway. This is just like a weird... It's weird that that ends so abruptly and I'll never be able to read Volume 4. So yeah, that's certainly unfortunate. Is there anything else to talk about with this? I mean, this is probably the least interesting of all the things. I mean, the metaphor about vultures and you know, grave robbers is again, it's pretty apparent. It's you know, forced might even be a word you could use. I wouldn't, but it's again something meant for younger kids. This has the same problem that this artist has had through a lot of this book, which is that when characters are at a distance, they do not have faces. And that's weird. I'm trying to find a panel of it because it just makes it look kind of creepy. And, you know, you don't have to do a ton of detail on a face if it's further away. But to just leave it blank is weird and disturbing. I, of course, can't find an example as I talk about it, but it was in the last 2 volumes, and I know I've seen it in here. Oh, here's a good one. So there's Alulia in the background, and she just doesn't have a face. Like, you can get it closer to the camera, she just doesn't have a face. And that's kind of just all throughout the book. It's anytime characters kind of distant, they don't have faces. And that's a weird thing to do. I don't know why you wouldn't just draw a couple details of the outline of a face. It looks awkward when you do stuff like that. Here's another example. This one isn't even that far away. Like, Zorro's just helping this guy up, and he just doesn't have a face. Zorro, you didn't have to save that guy. Turns out he's the devil, because he doesn't have a fucking face. I don't know. This is different. There's some cool stuff done with the art too, though. Like, I love as he's cracking the whip to like chain these 2 guys together so they can't shoot at him. It forms a Z. That's kind of neat. He does that later too, or earlier in the book too, where he's sword fighting and he's got the panel breaks down in a Z shape, which is kind of neat. If I can find it. Gotta flip through the book looking for a panel. It's not unprofessional at all. This is the problem with reviewing off the cuff for something like this, is you don't necessarily have it right in front of you. And so it makes things just look kind of, you know, weird as you go to try to find the thing. I can't find the damn panel. Fuck it. Anyway, I certainly enjoyed reading it. It's not anything super deep or special. It doesn't have much to talk about. It's just present. Um, so that'll be the end of that.
That's not a comic book. Now that's a comic book.